What if the key to unlocking your financial potential isn't in what you do, but in how you feel? What if the real barrier to greater income isn't a lack of strategy or opportunities, but an unconscious emotional state that's been quietly influencing every financial decision you've ever made? In a world obsessed with hustle, productivity, and constant action, it's easy to overlook the truth. Money is deeply connected to your inner energy. It's not just about working harder or smarter, it's about shifting the energy you bring to the table. When your internal frequency vibrates with stability, clarity, and calm, financial opportunities don't just show up, they are attracted to you. But here's the catch: this isn't a quick fix formula. This is about deep internal transformation, moving beyond surface-level affirmations or tactical shifts, and truly rewiring the way you operate at a fundamental level. It's about leaving behind the patterns of scarcity, rush, and reactivity, and stepping into a new paradigm where your financial success flows from a place of alignment, not desperation. If you've ever felt like money slips through your fingers despite your best efforts, or you've found yourself stuck in cycles of frustration, there's a reason. The problem isn't always the decisions you're making, it's the energy that's driving those decisions. In this journey, we'll explore how to shift that energy, stabilize your emotional baseline, and clear the internal blocks that have been silently sabotaging your financial growth. This is more than just a mindset shift. It's a full-body experience. So, let's dive in and explore how transforming your inner world can unlock the financial possibilities that have always been within your reach. The change begins now, and it starts from within. Low vibration doesn't announce itself loudly. It slips in quietly, disguised as constant worry, mental rush, and that lingering feeling of, I'm always behind. From the outside, life looks busy, even productive. But underneath, the nervous system is running on alert mode, and money can feel that. Financial stagnation isn't bad luck, it's often the visible symptom of an internal state that's been stuck on repeat for too long. When someone lives in chronic anxiety, decisions stop being strategic and start being reactive. Bills get paid late or in panic. Opportunities are rushed into or dismissed too quickly. There's little space to think clearly. And clarity, whether people like it or not, is a currency. Without it, even good income can leak away through poor timing, emotional spending, or partnerships chosen out of fear instead of alignment. Here's the tricky part: low vibration often feels urgent. Everything feels like it needs to happen now. That urgency pushes people to chase short-term relief instead of long-term structure. For example, someone might jump into a business idea not because it makes sense, but because they're desperate for fast cash. Or they'll overwork, thinking more effort alone will fix everything, while ignoring the quality of their focus and emotional stability. Money, however, doesn't respond well to frantic energy. It tends to move toward environments that are stable, predictable, and grounded. Think about it: banks, investors, and successful businesses all rely on calm decision-making and long-term planning. When a person's internal world is chaotic, their financial world mirrors that chaos almost perfectly, even if they're intelligent or hardworking. Another overlooked factor is attention. Low vibration consumes attention with worry, comparison, and mental noise. That leaves very little bandwidth for noticing subtle opportunities. A conversation that could have turned into a partnership gets missed. A simple idea that could have grown into income never gets explored because the mind is too busy surviving instead of observing. This is why some people seem to do everything right, yet stay financially stuck. It's not about intelligence or effort, it's about the emotional baseline they operate from every day. If the baseline is stress, frustration, and impatience, decisions will unconsciously aim at safety and relief, not growth. And safety thinking rarely creates expansion. Once this is seen clearly, something important starts to shift. Financial growth stops being about doing more and starts being about stabilizing first. Because as soon as the internal state changes, behavior changes, and that's where the next layer of signals quietly begins to form. Money is surprisingly sensitive to signals most people don't realize they're sending. It's not just about numbers in a bank account, but about patterns of behavior that quietly communicate scarcity. Urgency is one of the loudest of these signals. When someone rushes every decision, negotiates from desperation, or constantly asks, "How fast can this pay me?" the message underneath is clear: instability is present. Comparison is another subtle repellent. The moment a person measures their progress against others, especially with envy or frustration, their focus fractures. Instead of building something solid, attention leaks into what everyone else is doing. This often leads to copying strategies that don't fit, investing in things without understanding them, or abandoning good plans too early because someone else seems ahead. Disorganization is a signal many underestimate. Late invoices, messy finances, unclear pricing, or not knowing exact numbers may seem small, but they communicate a lack of containment. Money tends to flow where it's respected and tracked. For example, someone who doesn't review expenses weekly or doesn't separate personal and business accounts is unconsciously telling money it won't be handled with care. Emotional reactions around money also speak volumes. Feeling a spike of fear when checking an account balance, or a rush of excitement followed by guilt after spending, creates a push-pull dynamic. This inconsistency makes it hard to build momentum. Calm, boring consistency, not emotional highs and lows, is what compounds over time. There's also the habit of over-explaining or justifying prices and decisions. When someone feels the need to convince others of their value, it often means they haven't fully embodied it themselves. Clients, partners, and even employers pick up on that hesitation instantly. Value is felt long before it's explained. The interesting part is that none of these behaviors are wrong. They're protective. They come from a system trying to stay safe. But protection and expansion are different modes. As long as the body is signaling threat, money interprets that as risk and stays at a distance. Once these signals are recognized, the work stops being about attracting more and starts being about removing friction. And that naturally leads to a deeper question: what if scarcity isn't just a mindset issue, but something rooted much deeper in the body itself? Most people try to fix financial scarcity at the level of thought. They repeat affirmations, visualize abundance, and tell themselves to think positive. Yet nothing changes. That's because scarcity isn't primarily a belief problem, it's a physiological one. When the nervous system is stuck in survival mode, the body doesn't respond to ideas, it responds to perceived threat. In survival mode, the brain prioritizes short-term safety. It scans for danger, not opportunity. This is why someone can know a better decision exists and still choose the familiar, smaller option. The body is saying, don't risk it. No amount of positive thinking overrides a system that believes instability equals danger. This is also why willpower burns out so fast. When the nervous system is dysregulated, discipline feels heavy and inconsistent. One day there's motivation, the next day exhaustion. Financial plans get started with enthusiasm and quietly abandoned. It's not laziness, it's a system conserving energy because it doesn't feel safe enough to expand. Think about someone trying to invest while constantly stressed. Even if the numbers make sense, their body feels tension. They hesitate, delay, or pull out too early. Or they swing the opposite way and over-risk, chasing relief from pressure. Both behaviors come from the same root, a system that doesn't trust stability yet. This is why people can increase income and still feel poor. The external numbers change, but the internal baseline stays the same. The body keeps interpreting life as unstable, so money either leaves quickly or never feels like enough. True financial growth requires the body to experience consistency long enough to recalibrate. Stabilizing the nervous system isn't about doing nothing or becoming passive. It's about creating internal conditions where choice becomes available. Simple things, regular sleep, predictable routines, fewer impulsive decisions, begin to signal safety. And safety is what allows the brain to think long-term. Once the body exits survival, something subtle but powerful happens. Decisions slow down. Reactions soften. And a new emotional baseline starts to form, one that looks very different from scarcity, and surprisingly similar across people who naturally attract money. When you observe people who consistently build wealth, a pattern emerges that has nothing to do with hype or hustle. Their emotional baseline is calm. Not passive, not detached, calm. They don't rush decisions, and they don't panic when things fluctuate. This steadiness creates an environment where money can stay, grow, and compound. Predictability is a major factor here. These individuals are emotionally predictable, even when circumstances aren't. Wins don't make them reckless, and losses don't make them spiral. Because of that, their decisions remain aligned with long-term strategy instead of short-term emotion. This alone eliminates a massive amount of financial leakage. Focus is another defining trait. People who attract money aren't scattered. They choose fewer things and stick with them longer. This allows skills to deepen, reputations to solidify, and systems to mature. For example, instead of chasing 5 income streams, they build one until it's stable, then expand from a position of strength. There's also a noticeable absence of drama around money. Conversations about income, pricing, or investment are neutral, almost boring. That neutrality is powerful. It allows clear negotiation, accurate risk assessment, and consistent execution. Emotional charge clouds judgment, neutrality sharpens it. Interestingly, these people often move slower, but with far more precision. They wait for clean signals before acting. This patience isn't hesitation, it's regulation. Their nervous system isn't demanding immediate relief, so timing becomes an ally instead of an enemy. This emotional baseline didn't appear overnight. It was trained through repetition, making decisions from clarity, not urgency, and experiencing the safety of consistency. Over time, the body learns that expansion doesn't equal danger. And once this baseline is in place, behavior starts to change naturally. Reactions decrease. Impulses lose their grip. Which raises the next crucial shift: leaving low vibration isn't about doing more, but about reacting less. Reactive behavior is the fingerprint of low vibration. It shows up as quick replies, emotional spending, impulsive commitments, and decisions made just to stop discomfort. The moment someone begins reacting less, their entire financial trajectory starts to change, often faster than expected. When reactions slow down, choice appears. Instead of saying yes out of pressure, there's space to evaluate. Instead of buying to soothe emotion, spending becomes intentional. Even a pause of 24 hours before financial decisions can dramatically reduce regret and leakage. That pause signals maturity, not hesitation. Reducing impulsivity also improves the quality of opportunities that show up. People who are calm and grounded attract different conversations. They're trusted with larger responsibilities, better partnerships, and more flexible deals. Not because they're louder, but because they're stable. One practical shift is learning to separate emotion from action. Feeling anxious doesn't require doing something immediately. For example, instead of reacting to market news by selling or buying impulsively, someone might step away, review data later, and decide from clarity. This simple habit protects capital more than most strategies. Another shift is in communication. Reactive people often over-explain, defend, or negotiate against themselves. As reactivity drops, language becomes cleaner and more confident. Pricing gets firmer. Boundaries strengthen. Money respects boundaries. What's powerful is that this doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness. Each time a reaction is paused, the nervous system learns that nothing bad happens when urgency isn't obeyed. Over time, this rewires trust in one's own decision-making. And once reactions no longer run the show, a surprising thing happens. The chase begins to fade. And with it, the resistance that comes from trying to force money to arrive on a specific timeline. Chasing money seems logical, but it quietly creates resistance. When someone is constantly pursuing income with urgency, every action carries pressure. Offers feel forced. Negotiations feel tight. And people on the other side can sense it. Money tends to move away from pressure and toward value. When the chase stops, strategy begins. Instead of asking, "How can I get money faster?" the question becomes, "How can I create something useful, clear, and durable?" This shift changes everything. Value creation naturally attracts compensation, while chasing compensation without value usually exhausts energy and credibility. Positioning plays a major role here. People who stop chasing focus on where they fit best. They refine a skill, clarify a message, or improve a system. For example, instead of constantly pitching services to anyone, they identify a specific problem they solve well and communicate it simply. Clarity is magnetic. There's also a timing element. When urgency fades, patience grows. This allows someone to wait for cleaner opportunities instead of settling for misaligned ones. Fewer deals, better terms. Less effort, more return. That's not luck, it's alignment between internal state and external action. Interestingly, this doesn't mean working less. It means working with direction. Energy stops leaking into scattered attempts and starts compounding in one lane. Consistency becomes easier because the work no longer feels like survival. This is where flow begins to replace force. Conversations become more natural. Ideas land more cleanly. And income starts showing up through channels that feel surprisingly smooth, sometimes even indirect. But for this shift to hold, something deeper must change. Because strategy alone can't sustain growth if identity stays rooted in survival. The next level opens only when the internal role changes entirely. Every income ceiling is tied to an identity. Not a goal, not a strategy, an identity. As long as someone sees themselves as a financial survivor, their decisions will prioritize stability over expansion. Even smart moves will be filtered through caution, self-doubt, and the need for immediate reassurance. The shift happens when the internal role changes from, I need money, to, I create value. This is subtle but profound. A survivor asks, how do I avoid losing? A value creator asks, how do I build something useful that compounds? That question alone reorganizes priorities, time allocation, and risk tolerance. With this identity shift, daily decisions look different. Learning becomes intentional, not desperate. Skills are chosen for leverage, not urgency. For example, instead of hopping between trends, someone might commit to mastering communication, sales, leadership, or systems thinking, skills that pay repeatedly over time. There's also a noticeable change in self-trust. Value creators don't need constant external validation. They evaluate results, adjust, and continue. This reduces emotional dependency on outcomes. A failed attempt becomes feedback, not a threat to identity. And that emotional resilience is what allows larger bets later on. Money responds strongly to this shift because consistency increases. Offers become clearer. Execution improves. Long-term thinking becomes natural. Even rest is reframed, not as escape, but as maintenance for performance. What's interesting is that this identity isn't adopted through affirmations. It's trained through behavior. Each aligned decision reinforces the new role. Each time someone chooses clarity over panic, the identity stabilizes. And once identity changes, energy follows. Which opens the door to something practical and immediately applicable: how to stabilize that energy before making financial moves, instead of cleaning up after them. Before any significant financial decision, the most valuable step isn't analysis, it's regulation. A regulated state produces cleaner thinking, better timing, and fewer regrets. One simple practice is creating a non-negotiable pause. Even 12 or 24 hours between impulse and action can completely change the quality of a decision. Routine is another stabilizer. Predictable mornings, consistent sleep, and regular movement send powerful signals of safety to the nervous system. When the body feels safe, the mind stops rushing. This is why many high performers protect boring routines fiercely. They know chaos is expensive. Writing things down also reduces internal noise. Before making a money move, listing facts versus fears helps separate reality from emotion. For example, what do I know for sure? What am I assuming? What's the worst realistic outcome? This simple structure often reveals that urgency was never justified. Limiting input is equally important. Making financial decisions while consuming news, social media, or other people's opinions increases reactivity. A cleaner environment supports cleaner choices. Many wealthy individuals intentionally reduce exposure before major decisions, not to avoid reality, but to hear themselves think. Another practical habit is decision batching. Instead of constantly deciding, allocate specific times to review finances, investments, or strategy. This trains the brain to stay calm outside those windows. Money stops being an emotional trigger and becomes a scheduled responsibility. Over time, these practices create a stable internal signal. And when the signal stabilizes, something unexpected happens. Opportunities that once felt invisible begin to surface naturally, not because you chased them, but because you were finally in a state to notice them. Opportunities don't suddenly start existing when someone changes internally, they were always there. What changes is perception. When the internal signal leaves scarcity, the mind exits tunnel vision. Attention widens. Subtle details, timing cues, and relational openings that were previously ignored begin to stand out naturally, almost effortlessly. In a scarcity state, the brain filters reality through threat. It only notices what confirms lack, urgency, or competition. This is why many people swear that nothing ever comes their way. It's not that life is empty, it's that their nervous system can't register nuance while it's busy surviving. Once regulation replaces tension, perception upgrades. This shift shows up first in conversations. Someone mentions a problem casually, and instead of feeling intimidated or rushed to monetize it, clarity emerges. Connections form between ideas, skills, and needs. The person doesn't interrupt, rush, or pitch prematurely. They listen fully. And listening, ironically, is one of the strongest opportunity magnets that exists. People also respond differently. Calm, grounded energy creates trust without effort. Others feel safe sharing information, ideas, and invitations. This is how many opportunities actually move, quietly, relationally, without announcements. Reactive individuals rarely access these channels because they unknowingly broadcast pressure, unpredictability, or emotional need. As the signal stabilizes, discernment sharpens. Not every opportunity looks good anymore. Some offers feel rushed, misaligned, or energetically expensive. And instead of fearing loss, there's comfort in saying no. This filtering is crucial, because growth isn't just about access, it's about selection. Wealth compounds through what you don't engage with as much as what you do. Ideas also mature. Instead of chasing trends or copying models, insights become integrative. A skill developed years ago suddenly connects with a current market need. Past experiences reorganize themselves into something structured and useful. This kind of synthesis only happens when the mind has space. Survival mode blocks integration, regulation enables it. Timing becomes an ally. When urgency dissolves, patience increases. Decisions aren't delayed out of fear, but chosen deliberately. There's room to test, refine, and position properly. This reduces costly mistakes and increases long-term leverage. Money responds well to timing that isn't forced. Another subtle but powerful change is emotional neutrality around outcomes. Wins don't inflate identity, and losses don't threaten it. This emotional predictability allows consistency, which is the foundation of trust, both internal and external. Investors, clients, and partners all look for the same thing: reliability over time. At this stage, money stops feeling external. It's no longer something to chase, impress, or control. It becomes feedback. A response to coherence between internal state, behavior, and value creation. Flow replaces friction not because life becomes easy, but because reactions no longer dominate decision-making. What's most interesting is that this state feels ordinary. There's less drama, less emotional charge, less obsession. And paradoxically, that boring stability is exactly what allows expansion to become sustainable. Growth no longer spikes and collapses, it builds. And once someone experiences this even briefly, something irreversible happens. They can't unsee the difference between acting from scarcity and acting from regulation. Awareness creates responsibility. Responsibility creates choice. And choice quietly asks the next question, not about money itself, but about how deliberately this new baseline will be maintained moving forward. Everything you've just absorbed points to one truth most people avoid: money doesn't respond to effort alone, it responds to coherence. Your emotional baseline, your nervous system, your patterns of reaction and choice, all of it is speaking every single day. The question is no longer whether it's sending a signal, but what kind of signal it's sending. Now comes the uncomfortable part: responsibility. Because once you understand that stagnation isn't random, you can't unsee it. You start noticing where urgency drives decisions, where fear disguises itself as logic, and where reactivity quietly drains momentum. And with that awareness comes power, the power to pause, to regulate, and to choose differently. So ask yourself honestly: where am I still reacting instead of choosing? What financial decisions am I making just to escape discomfort? What would change if I stabilized first, and moved second? Real change doesn't require dramatic moves. It requires consistency in small, grounded choices. Slowing down before deciding. Creating routines that signal safety. Building value patiently instead of chasing relief. These shifts may look subtle, but over time, they completely rewrite financial trajectories. If you apply even a fraction of what you've learned here, you won't just see changes in money, you'll feel a difference in clarity, confidence, and self-trust. And that internal stability is something no market fluctuation can take away from you. If this perspective challenged you, helped you see money differently, or put words to something you felt but couldn't explain, stay close. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning. We'll keep going deeper, into clarity, strategy, and the kind of inner alignment that actually sustains success. Now the real work starts. And it starts with your next choice.